Hello, everyone out there in computer land or internet land, however you want to say it. I am Brian Breitholtz. I am the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations and Executive Director of the Alumni Association. And it's wonderful having you with us today for another edition of our Coffee Talk series. These series have gone on starting in the spring semester and will continue throughout the fall, where we showcase a number of our deans from the colleges as a way for the deans to provide updates, what's taking place at Cleveland State and specifically within their college, along with an opportunity for you to ask questions directly to the deans in terms of what is taking place. To better understand how this process works, especially with questions, I'm going to introduce Jordan Burris. Jordan will talk very briefly about how to go about asking questions in this process. Then I will do some brief introductions and pass it on to Dean Robichaud. Jordan?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Really quick, there's a feature at the bottom of your screen that's marked Q&A. And if you use that feature, you can ask questions. We can keep track of the questions that are being asked, so we make sure that we address all of your questions. So use that feature at the bottom of your screen, Q&A, and that will, at the end, we will read your questions to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Dr. Allyson Robichaud is the Interim Dean and Associate Professor for the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. She joined Cleveland State in 1999 and has served previously as the Chair of the Department of Philosophy and Comparative Religion. Her teaching areas include ethics, bioethics, and environmental ethics. Wendy Regoeczi, I hope I got that right. Thank you. Dr. Regoeczi is Interim Associate Dean and Professor and Director of CSU's Criminology Research Center. Her research and teaching interests include criminology, domestic violence, homicide, sexual assault, and quantitative methods. Thank you both for joining us today for this presentation, and I will pass it to you, Dean Robichaud. And you are currently on mute, so we need to take you off of that. And Jordan, there we go.
All right, thank you very much. Lovely to be here this morning, another fine summer day, and I brought my coffee in my CSU mug for Coffee Talk, so I'm ready to go. And as you know, this is my sidekick, Wendy. She works in the dean's office with me. She's the dean for faculty, and I thought if anyone had any questions that might be in her area of expertise, not to mention all the other stuff she does, she'd be a good sidekick to have for this Coffee Talk this morning. So, first time doing this, I understand that people will be asking questions. I'm sure those of you who are paying attention to the world out there know that things are a little on the kooky side. And here at CSU, we are trying our best to accommodate and make arrangements in the face of everything that's happening. And currently we are working to try to bring classes back face-to-face where we can. And a lot of our classes will, of course, be occurring remotely. This has resulted in some special challenges for our college in particular, since we have the visual, performing, and written arts, and a number of places where being face-to-face is really the best way for things to be conducted, and or kind of the only way. Just anecdotally, in the spring when everybody rushed to go remotely, apparently some of our music students had the cops called on them because they were practicing loud instruments in their residences. And so we're trying to figure out ways for them to be able to practice unmolested by the police. And of course, the rooms that they generally practice in are nicely soundproof, but they're also very small. The building is not a young building, and so the HVAC systems are not what you'd want them to be. And in general, it turns out, I can't believe the things I now know about, including HVAC systems. Ordinarily, you want HVAC systems to circulate the air in a room. That's optimizing your system, but that, of course, is not what we want to have happening in this case. And it's also problematic to try to bring in outside air. In the summer, it gets hot and humid. In the winter, it gets cold and frigid, and you've got to heat or cool it. So the problems are rather legion in trying to keep everybody safe. We're ordering some special singer masks and trying to put our singers in the Wolstein Center, which many of you will know is this gigantic arena. So it's really been quite an interesting challenge to try to work all of this out. And there's also been a push to bring 100 and 200 level classes face-to-face where that can be done in order for new students, freshmen and juniors to be able to, or sophomores to be able to have something like a campus experience. So those are kind of the highlights. Right now, the campus is still fairly locked down, but we expect that to be changing. We had budget difficulties, as some of you may know, and the janitorial staff partially was furloughed, and that meant it was tough to keep up, and decisions were made to try to bring researchers back, and nurses in clinical programs started this past month. And so the janitorial staff has been sort of focused there to try to keep things clean. So hopefully now that we're back full force and hiring more janitorial staff to try to help out, because there's really only about 3.5 weeks before classes start on August the 24th. Wendy, do you have anything to add that you think I may have glossed over or missed there? Oh, Wendy's muted. Somebody will mute.
No, I mean, I think you've covered the main pieces. You know, certainly faculty have experienced challenges both in terms of teaching as well as in terms of research. So, you know, we have a number of folks who've been working on projects that require original data collection, and you know, our faculty do research in schools, in prisons, in archives, you know, all of which, you know, we have had lost access to during the pandemic. So, you know, much of the research is on hold, or people are regrouping and trying to come up with alternative ways of collecting the information they need for the particular studies that they're working on.
Yeah, our libraries currently remain closed, both the law library and the library that's located in Rhodes Tower. I know they're trying to get a path forward to have those open to some extent. And again, the details are just sort of astonishing. The campus runs as it does, and you don't give any of this a second thought when it's normal. And then when something like this happens, it's just incredible the number of moving parts and pieces, especially with this mandate to try to keep people distant and mask wearing and all of that. So there's a plan to try to get the libraries open, and so people can get access. Another thing, following up on what Wendy just said, especially in class, the humanities, particularly social sciences as well, we depend very much on OhioLink. For those of you who don't know, this is all libraries around Ohio linked together, and books travel from everywhere to us, and we send ours out as well. And over the years, with budgets being shrunk, it's really been quite wonderful because it's the consortium to get us all the books. And so that's also been shut down. And I believe they're in the process currently of trying to bring that up to get, again, so that researchers who depend on monographs to be able to do their work, journal articles, will be able once again to have access to those materials. I know Wendy told me she had to buy a bunch of books so she could finish an article that was due, right?
Yes, good thing you can get used books through Amazon.
So faculty like Wendy who are doing these kinds of projects are having to be kind of clever to finish off things that they'd committed to with deadlines. And I'm certain many people are pushing deadlines back too for invited things, book chapters and so forth, just because access to materials. This will not just be true of us, this will be true nationwide, of course.
We do have a question. One of the questions is how, if any, has the remote learning experience affected the quality of instruction?
For the spring semester, I think the quality of instruction was not what it would have been had people been able to remain in the classroom. So we have always had online courses, which were developed to be online courses. The instruction in those online courses remained optimal as always because there was no change. But for everybody else who suddenly had to try to put together their courses to deliver what would have been classroom delivery remotely, it was a real heavy lift. Faculty mainly did just an amazing job. In our college, which is the one I know best, I think we really sort of came up. And what I was telling our faculty at that time was, let's not shoot for optimal. That's really not going to be possible. We want to stay above suboptimal. And I think they did an excellent job, especially for people who are teaching multiple courses that have different preparations. It was really a heavy lift. And they did things asynchronously, a lot of them, because nobody really gotten onto the Zoom much at that point. Some folks who were better at it did it. And Blackboard, which is the software that we use at CSU to deliver online course content, has another kind of feature called Collaborator, and that's like Zoom, only it looks slightly different. So some folks got really good at doing that by the end of it. And over the summertime, we've been running courses through our Center for Faculty Excellence to bring a lot of instructors who would be teaching remotely again. So we're still calling the in-classroom classes remote. We're not calling them online because they're not designated as online classes. And once this whole scenario gets better with the pandemic, they'll go back to being face-to-face. So that's to distinguish them from what I'll call true online courses. And Wendy, we had buckets of folks sign up for all these classes. They had to add extra ones. Do you have a sense of how many folks in our college instructors signed up to do these, to learn how to use Blackboard really efficiently? And I'll just add one more thing before Wendy jumps in. A lot of the classes that are remote are going to be done synchronously. That is, there will be the class time set up and everybody will be jumping on either to Zoom or through Collaborator in Blackboard, the software that gets used, because especially for incoming students, the idea of having the structure in place where they've got to be someplace and they're seeing their instructor and they're being reminded all the time that they've got this class is of paramount importance. So a lot of them are being done that way. So Wendy, can you say a few words about these remote instructional classes that have been happening over the summertime?
I don't have any numbers in terms of participation from our college, but I have heard anecdotally from a number of faculty who really hadn't had very much in the way of online teaching experience signing up for those. So, I do think that, faculty who have kind of avoid, because in many departments, you don't have to teach online. It's typically an optional thing. And, some faculty have really embraced that. Others are more into sort of traditional teaching styles and like the in-person teaching. So, for that latter group, I think it was a bit of a shock to make that transition. And it was a big learning curve to be learning Blackboard at the same time that all these things were going on. And the other thing that was a significant challenge is that some of these folks were teaching very large classes, much larger than we would typically allow for an online class. Many of our online classes are capped in the neighborhood of about 40 students because it's a lot to manage that many students in an online environment. But some of these classes that transitioned over to online when everything went remote had more than 100 students in them, which is a significant challenge for faculty to navigate, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with Blackboard. So it seems like faculty over the summer have embraced the many opportunities that CSU's e-learning center and the Center for Faculty Excellence have provided in order to better hone their skills on the online teaching front. Blackboard does have a lot of capabilities that faculty can learn, and it can really produce a very good virtual environment for teaching if you have the time to kind of learn all those extra features that are in there. The Center for Faculty Excellence is also running several book discussions, which have been incredibly popular and seem to be full, so students or faculty can learn how to do things like flip learning in an online environment over the summer as well. So I expect that faculty will be coming into the fall feeling far more comfortable with teaching in an online environment and with more skills in their toolkit.
May I ask a question? I think about COVID hit us midway through the semester. Now we went remote. So now we'll be beginning this semester, a new semester with, I'm not sure how many, but there'll be a certain percentage of remote classes as well. But the difference, I think, is no one has textbooks. Before you had your textbooks because you went on campus and you purchased your textbooks or whatever supplies you needed. How is that going to be addressed at this point? Can they order textbooks online, or what is that process?
I think it'll be multiple various ways. The bookstore will be open, and so it may well be that some folks will use texts. There are now available quite a wide variety of electronic books. And so a lot of people who are teaching remotely or online, in fact, will be using that service. And there's like the first year writing experience is now using an online book, and it's just rolled into their tuition band costs. And everybody has the same book, and it's all electronic. And so that they've been doing that for quite a while. Not only is it more convenient, but it's a big cost saver too, because the online is much cheaper. And in some cases, I suppose kids will probably buy hard copy books from Amazon or wherever they can get them. I think that always happens anyway. And also the library makes use of electronic course reserves. Many journal articles now are digitized. And so faculty can assign those kinds of learning things. You can scan a chapter of a textbook. That's fair use if you upload that electronically just for your classroom use. So people have, and even for quite a number of years now, I don't know how many years it is now, Wendy, but every class, face-to-face class, has been assigned a Blackboard shell. So a lot of instructors, even teaching face-to-face, have been utilizing Blackboard for posting syllabi, posting articles, posting books, and have also been using it for grading. Before I started, I was mostly teaching online before I came into the dean's office, but I was doing a lot of online stuff. You can set up true-false quizzes. You can have them submit all of their essays. I got very used to grading electronically. So the days of flipping papers were sort of over, and the ability to download an essay into a Word program and then use the reviewer function to make all the comments and send it back was actually really quite nice. And for students who wanted that kind of feedback, it worked extremely well. So I think a lot of faculty were already sort of there with that. And so I think there were likely a few who found it pretty difficult. And then there's the weird outliers, like how do you teach drums? If you're a music instructor, do drum lessons, and the video might sort of go in and out. And so you're trying to judge whether somebody's playing the piano properly, and they can't, you can't make films electronically. So I think for those folks, the good news for us and our students in the spring semester anyway, was that everybody had about 7 or 8 weeks where they'd been together, they learned some hands-on skills. In the film school, a lot of equipment was out, and students then were doing little projects. Everybody's got those fancy phones, or nearly everybody. So people got very clever, and they may have to get very clever again. We're really hopeful that they're going to be able to have students in the classroom in those disciplines, if not full, then hybrid, so that you have some of the students coming and going. So I think that it's going to be a better experience, even though in the fall it was tough. And the electronic availability of all sorts of stuff now, sort of the textbook thing, I mean, they've been saying this for years now, textbooks are probably a dying commodity.
Okay.
To some extent, and there's some disciplines where you just want to have a textbook in front of you to be able to highlight and underline. But a lot of kids now are electronic babes, and they're not really interested in holding a physical book.
Right.
They're very comfortable. So I think that
Good
problem
point.
probably going to be okay.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we
I
do
would
have
just-
a couple questions. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I would just really emphasize that I feel like a lot when there are assigned textbooks, like hard copy books, that students are very resourceful in identifying places to buy those where they can get them at the cheapest prices. So even if the bookstore weren't open, they usually have good leads on places you can find those books.
True.
Elizabeth?
I was just going to jump in with a couple of questions from the audience. First one is, which classes will be on campus in class versus online, especially the fine arts like sculpture, dance, etc.? I know you touched on that a little bit, but I think they were looking for some more details.
Well, everything that can be done remotely will be done remotely. So art history obviously can be done remotely. Theories of theater and dance can be done remotely. Analysis of, I'm not pulling up to mind course names for film, but everything that can be done remotely is being done remotely. And then everything that requires hands-on, sculpture, filmmaking, music ensembles, all those kinds of things. We've worked really hard and had lots of meetings with the architect's office to figure out spacing and how many people in a room, and we're buying masks and shields and microphones and all of that. So yeah, sculpture is going to happen face-to-face, socially distant with masks. And we reduced the caps on classes for film because they worked out how many people could be in a room. And so one class might be split into two groups, and they come each once a week instead of everybody would have come twice a week. And so there will be a hybrid model, and they'll do some of it online and they'll do some of it. And they'll in the space, you know, you can't really do dance very well online, and that's what had to happen before. There's a dance class running right now, and they're doing a lot of it virtually, and then they're going to do some of it next week, maybe outdoors, partially in the studio. So a bit of a work in progress, but yeah, our intention for our college particularly, and it's true in the sciences, chemistry labs and biology labs, you need to really be in the space with your hands-on stuff. And so that's been the goal, to try to bring back as much of that. And then, as I mentioned, first year writing, they very much wanted to have that be face-to-face. There are remote sections, so there will always be an opportunity for students who can't come to campus for various reasons, or who wind up needing to drop out. There's going to be a possibility for them to continue remotely. But where we could do it, we're doing it face-to-face.
Great, and we do have another one here. Let's see. Will Project 60 classes be open to students either online or on campus? So many Project 60 students take courses in class.
Yeah, my understanding is that's a go, unless there's some special reason that already is in place. So Project 60 students are going to be welcome to sign up as usual. Once things get rolling, they're allowed to see if there's room left in classes. Some classes it might get a little tougher because some of the caps have been lowered. Like Wendy mentioned, we had these crazy 125 student on, you know, face-to-facers that had to go remote. So we've dropped caps. So I think the rule is if the course is full, the Project 60 students can't be admitted into them. But there's enough options that I think it should probably work out.
Great, and it sounds like actually I think you sort of answered the next question in that statement, asking if there was a new plan for keeping the class size down in those remote classes that you had mentioned were really large.
Yeah, we dropped the caps on those and added a section where we needed to try to keep the number of possible spots available still open. And I didn't decide this, but the rule sort of was anything over 60 students had to be taught remotely, because the university just doesn't have enough space to accommodate socially distanced. You can imagine, I think I'll get the numbers vaguely correct here. So if you've got an auditorium kind of space that can hold 140 or 150 people, you can put like 40 of them in it. When
Wow.
you're socially distanced, because you need 6 feet, you know, all the way around, right?
Oh, true.
So it really limits. And so some of our, like the communications lab for the digital journalism class, the students are going to be learning remotely, but they need to come in because most of them don't have the kind of computing power or the Adobe software, which were licensed to machines in those labs.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, the desks, it's stupid stuff, right? So the desks might be 4.5, 5 feet long with a computer at each end, which means you can't have students at each one. So that reduces the class size that you can have in the room. So instead of being able to put 24 students in, you can put 10, right? So, and they're going to be working out some very complicated schedule with faculty and grad students to try to be there to make sure that folks are behaving themselves in the space, and students will be given a particular date and time when they get to come, and it will be for homework, right? So those classes, we capped them a little bit lower as well, knowing that the computer labs wouldn't be able to accommodate the usual size classes. So, I mean, I'll tell you, a necessity is the mother of invention, and that's sort of been the watchword for a lot of this.
It does sound complex, the scheduling and everything.
Right.
Yeah, I was amazed at how quickly higher ed moved when this pandemic impacted us. Because typically we joke around about how slow everything is in higher education, and things were happening at an incredible pace. So the plans you shared, Dean, sound great, but I'm also wondering, as the state of Ohio seems to change on a weekly basis in terms of the different color codings based on the number of COVID cases, I presume we take that into account where we might have the best plans in place, but suddenly next week we're red or purple, and that has an impact, correct?
Absolutely. Everybody who's teaching face-to-face knows that he or she might well be expected to move back to the remote environment. And so they're keeping that in mind. There's also a number of classes that are face-to-face where there's only one section and it's a required course. So those faculty are having, there's video capability in the room so that they can record their lectures. And for students who need that class but can't come to campus for various reasons, they will also be able to have access to that course and be able to complete it. But yeah, no, everybody's on tenterhooks, right? Where we did all this, the sort of joke is we've had all these meetings and made all these plans and figured all this out. We better be able to get to use those plans.
Right.
I mean, if anything, the hope is that there's the need to back off some of the face-to-face, but not everything, right? So the classes that I was talking about, somebody asked the question about sculpture. We really just, you know, got every part of ourselves crossed in order to hope that we can continue to offer those things face-to-face, because you just can't really replicate that any other way, right? I mean, you can only go so far with a piece of clay at your living room coffee table trying to create something. I mean, and honestly, the other thing that's been really impressive is to see the sorts of things that have come out nationwide, right? So we got access to a research survey about music schools and, you know, pictures of things coming out when they blow horns. And so straight horns are more dangerous than curvy ones because
Wow.
out, and you could put these bells on them to stop the stuff from coming out. And so, you know, everybody's really gotten very, very creative in the intellectual communities to try to combat these problems and to share information. That's the other thing that's been really amazing. I've been attending Ohio deans meetings every 2 weeks and getting information from other state and other private deans about what they're doing in their colleges. And then people have stories. So I was asking about music. Well, somebody wasn't the dean with that in their college, but their son's in Texas and they're freaking out because they're worried about him in that state because it's in trouble. And he was talking a little about the sorts of things. But in Texas, guess what? They can all do music outside, right?
Right.
And there they are. Whereas here, our tent wouldn't last for very long because the tents have to be open-sided. They can't be, you know, like a circus with sides. So, and we thought about that briefly, putting a tent out in front of the music building, but then you got to drag some kind of piano out there all the time. And, you know, Ohio's not noted for its great weather in October.
Right.
Right. So now we're looking, they're actually looking at Wolstein today to see how that might work for the singers. I mean, the singers are the ones we're especially worried about because of, you know, the evidence of choirs causing all kinds of havoc.
Right.
Singing.
The things we are learning due to this pandemic, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
It is.
I mean, I'd rather not be doing it necessarily, but it is kind of fun to see how people are really coming up with all sorts of incredible workarounds.
It definitely sounds like it allows for a lot of creative thought. We did have one more question kind of on that topic. How will performances or exhibitions be handled? Are those just on pause while all this is going on, or will there be a venue for that?
No, that will be on pause, unfortunately. We've been talking about music recitals that students have to do, and generally they get to have an audience, and so they won't be having an audience. And another really crazy conversation about being able to live stream and copyright and how that's just enormously expensive. So because, you know, students generally want to at least share their performance with their family who won't be able to be in attendance. And so we're looking at recording, and that can only take place in our two large halls, Hvac Auditorium and Drinko Hall. And Hvac is going to be commandeered for some classrooms because it seats 140 students. So, and the recording capabilities are only in those two venues. So if you really did have somebody doing a recital, they could be in a small classroom, but then it can't be recorded, you know, so yeah, unfortunately, all those kinds of things will be on pause, and any community activities that generally used our facilities will not be happening in the fall. And I'm sort of, well, I go between glass half empty, glass half full, but with the pandemic, I'm the glass half empty category here. And I get a feeling that the spring semester is also going to be a bit of a challenge. So to put that out there as a possibility for us to have to continue. We're hearing great things about the possibility of a vaccine, which can't wait to roll up my sleeve and get myself. And if that all works out in the way that it's starting to look like it might, they're starting the phase 3 trials I heard last night on the news. That means they've gone through safety and efficacy, and now they're going to wide distribution. And in animal models anyway, it looks like they're getting immunity in a couple of days, which is exactly what we want. So, you know, we're close to the great apes. I felt sorry for those poor things being exposed to COVID, but that's what happened. So now the human trials will begin, and in healthcare workers, particularly who are working around, I think we'll get information fairly quickly. And my understanding is they've been ramping up, like you can imagine. They got to mass produce all those little vials. They've got to have the system set up. They need the vats in place to start producing this stuff. I mean, the production line for wanting, well, in our country, probably upwards of 350 million vaccines, that's not nothing either. So they're already talking about, well, this hits my area of bioethics, who's going to get the vaccine first? So there'll be discussions about that. Yeah, right. I say that too. Pick me, but I'm not a frontline healthcare worker. So, I'm sorry, but academics might be lower on the list. Right?
I fear you are right. Hey, Dean, one thing if you could share is when you say class, I don't know if everyone even knows what are the different schools within the college and areas, because that's, you know, class is relatively new. Would you mind sharing a little bit of background on the college and its scope, because it is fairly broad?
All right, Wendy, you're going to have to help me here to make sure that I don't miss anything. It's too bad our office manager from the dean's office isn't here. She's got a mnemonic or some magic way that she always knows. I've got my other computer here so I can at least pull up the call page, and that way I won't miss anybody, which is always what I worry about.
Right.
But everybody's heard me talk about the School of Music. They were a department until just recently, and now they have become a School of Music. And as you've heard from me talking, boy, that's a very complicated program with all kinds of stuff that goes on in there. And so there's a lot that has to get figured out all the time. Department of Art and Design, we had a question about sculpture. And so they do all of the fine arts, painting, drawing, photography, and also computer design work. That's where your graphic designers are located. And we've got Black Studies program, which isn't quite a college or a department, but it's a very good concerning program. Wendy's old school, her old department rather, of criminology, anthropology, and sociology. You want to say a few words about your old stomping grounds, Wendy?
We have Wendy on mute again.
Muted again.
Sorry, I had to mute for barking dogs.
Oh.
So my home department has changed a lot since I arrived at Cleveland State University. When I came in 2000, it was a department of sociology that offered a major in sociology, or you could major in sociology with a concentration in criminology. And over the course of 20 years, it developed a separate criminology major. So now you can get a BA, excuse me, in criminology. And then at some point along the line there, the name of the department changed to include criminology. So it's the Department of Sociology and Criminology. And then in 2016, the Department of Anthropology merged with Sociology and Criminology. And from that point on, for the last 4 years, it's been the Department of Criminology, Anthropology, and Sociology. So in terms of the number of faculty, and probably also in terms of the number of majors, it's either the largest or second largest department in our college now.
Wow.
And we refer to it as CAS because saying all of that all the time is overwhelming. Exactly. School of Communication, they're very large as well, lots of faculty, and they do all the communication stuff. And as I mentioned, the digital journalism course, which they've been really upgrading, all 2 new lab situations for that with new computers and the software and everything that's needed. And the Cleveland Stater, there's a faculty oversight. It's not part of the School of Communication, not connected with them politically in any way. They're independent, but faculty from School of Communication looks after them. Got the Department of Economics, Department of English, the School of Film and Media Arts that I spoke about earlier, the History Department, Department of Philosophy and Comparative Religion, my old stomping grounds, in a similar situation that Wendy was just describing. It was Department of Philosophy and actually Department of Religious Studies, and they both became very small through attrition, budget cutting, whatever, and they merged. These are administrative merges. Programs remain completely distinct, but they have 1 chair and 1 admin secretary and that sort of thing. Political Science Department, School of Social Work, which is massive, and they've got a great master's program. They're just submitting the final paperwork to solidify an online master's program for all the folks who are looking to increase. They've got a bachelor's, they want a master's, but they work full time. The online environment is perfect for that. So that's going to be good. Department of Theater and Dance we mentioned, and the Department of World Languages, Literatures, and Cultures, where we've got all the folks who teach the foreign languages and look at all the literatures and cultures of different countries and locales. So yeah, I used to be able to rip it right off, but we got some, I think it's 8 departments and 9 schools, or 9 departments and 4 schools, or however it goes. Right. I had it better School of Music became a school. But yeah, it's the largest college on campus, and the most diverse. It's kind of crazy.
I was wondering about international students. I've heard different things over the past couple months. What is our status in terms of the ability for international students to attend and stay on campus if, for example, we have to go completely remote again?
My understanding is that the Department of Homeland Security's backed off of saying they had to be partly or whole face-to-face. I did hear the other day, but didn't follow up on this, that apparently if you're just starting now, you need to have at least some of your curriculum face-to-face. Given what's happening here in the United States, I don't know how many students are actually trying to get here to start their degree. And with the number of remote possibilities, I think they're all, and our college doesn't get so many undergraduates particularly who are coming here to get a degree. It's more like the College of Engineering, College of Business there, where the majority of them are. And they have everything available online. So I think a lot of them who have been accepted into the programs are just going to stay home in their native country and not bother. A lot of the embassies are closed, so it's not possible for them to get visas even if they thought they wanted to come here. And I think probably the number of international students that are going to be on campus are the ones that never went home because they either couldn't or didn't want to. So yeah, there will still be some of those folks around. Yeah, that's a huge kick in the pants for all of the universities in the United States, because we've all come to enjoy having a more multicultural, and financially it's a leg up too to have the international students. So everybody freaked out when the DHS suddenly said, yeah, you guys can't do this. It was really delightful that they backed off as quickly as they did. I don't think it hurt that Harvard and MIT were wagging their lawyers' fingers at them. So they realized they might have been outgunned if they tried to keep that in place.
Good.
We actually, we have a couple more questions. Right. How have you heard students faring during this?
Wendy, you want to take a go at that one?
I don't know how much I know on that one. Again, all my evidence on that is kind of anecdotal, just from, talking to faculty colleagues across the college, that it seemed like, most students, I think, did okay with the transition. We, as Allison mentioned, we do offer a lot of online classes. So, for students who've been at the university a bit, most of them had encountered some online classes along the way. And if not, as was mentioned previously, there is a heavy use of Blackboard even for in-person classes. So at least some of the technical skills were already in place for these students. I think some of their biggest challenges came from outside the university environment, but of course, it impacts your ability to be successful and concentrate on your studies. We have a lot of students that work, if not full-time, then part-time. Many of them work in industries that were significantly impacted by the pandemic, such as the restaurant industry. And so, they experienced, I think, a number of challenges related to the pandemic outside of their studies, which of course made it difficult for them to fully engage sometimes. But from my understanding, most students got through their courses. I'm not aware of a huge fall off in student participation. They may have been participating perhaps less than if this whole thing hadn't happened. But I'm not aware of many situations where students disappeared entirely, and faculty, I think, were very good about trying to keep students engaged, and reaching out to students that they hadn't heard from, that they weren't seeing on Zoom, checking in, making sure that people were okay, finding out what they needed. The university had some money available through the federal government for students, and we were, faculty were very good at making sure that students were aware of that, encouraging people to apply. So that's kind of the information that's come my way.
Yeah, I would agree. It's been anecdotal. We gave away a bunch of laptops at, I'm sorry, I can't remember the bank to credit them. They just sort of handed us 200, and those were given away to students. The digital divide was a real concern, and we gave away hotspots, and we're going to continue to do that in this semester. And I mean, I think the other thing that's really tough for students, some of them, right, is like trying to find a place to do your work that you can concentrate if your whole family's home. Now that the lockdown is well, it's over for now, and some folks are back to work and that kind of thing. But I think that was also a real stretch. And people have maybe figured out some tricks to try to keep that in check. And of course, CSMD announced that their first 9 weeks are going to be remote. Lots of our students have children, our faculty have children. So this is also going to put like a wrench in things. But Wendy's correct. We worked hard with the faculty. I outreached a number of times and got a hold of faculty and sort of really asked them to be gentle and kind and understanding and stay in touch. And students sometimes, when they get a little bummed out because they didn't turn something in, they get shy, they get scared, they don't want to talk, they're embarrassed. Just keep reaching out, make sure that they know that they can do what they need to do to finish. I didn't hear that we needed to do too many incompletes. The university decided to make everything pass-fail. That took a lot of pressure off everybody, because then basically, as long as you got at least a D, you got a pass. And so it didn't help your GPA, but it also didn't hurt. And then the decision was made, once students saw their grades, they could revert back to a grade, so that if somebody got a C and they really thought that was going to hurt their GPA, they could go pass fail. If they got an A, woohoo, then they'd go back and take the A and have that factor into their GPA.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that worked out really, really well for students to be able to manage their own GPAs in the way that worked best for them. And I think everybody was just pretty forgiving, because this was nobody's fault. And everybody, the rule of thumb was everybody needs to be held harmless, because no one caused this to happen. So, so far as I know, we're back to grades for the fall, and we'll see what happens if we wind up remote again. But this fall kickoff is supposed to really emulate business as usual under very unusual circumstances.
Good.
Great, we have another question. Is the music therapy program housed in the School of Music? Can you talk a bit about this program?
It is housed in the School of Music and in the Music and Communication building, and they just completed construction last year on a whole new clinical space, and we're continuing to work to try to complete that space, including if anybody out there wants to donate some money toward naming a room, we can always put that to very, very good use. So yes, and Wendy, we just hired somebody, another full-time faculty person. You want to say something about that for us?
So I'm trying to remember, Allison, off the top of my head. Or was it, there were 3, we added a 4th? Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Yep.
Yes. Yep. So we have a new music therapist joining us for the fall, which we're very excited about. Her name is Erin, and she comes with a great deal of experience and will be a great addition to the 3 faculty members that are already teaching in music therapy. We currently offer an undergraduate degree, and we have, I think the approvals have gone all the way through to start the master's in music therapy program as well. So is that ready to go for this
That's
fall?
correct. It was critical that we be allowed to hire the fourth faculty member because the accrediting body requires a minimum threshold of faculty. And so getting Aaron was a coup, and we were really pleased about that. And it allows us to start the master's program. So that's good.
Great.
One more question. How, when things ever do get back to normal, if they ever will get back to normal,
They will.
how do you think this will affect instruction going forward? Will it leave a lasting mark, or will we just go back to the way things were before?
Well, we were joking in the spring when the kids were graduating, and of course, it wasn't like any kind of graduation previously. And I sat in on the School of Social Work's virtual graduation ceremony, and they flashed up pictures of the graduates who were able to put little vignettes together if they wished. They posted sayings and pithy proverbs and quotes and things. It was actually quite nice. And one of the students flashed up hashtag class of COVID 2020. That was quite accurate. And of course, this will be huge, right? I mean, at least a number of us on the Zoom link here are old enough to have really been affected by huge things that have happened in history. And when you're young, 18, 19, you tend not to have really paid attention or lived through a big deal, right? Or even if you did, you weren't really cognizant of it in the way that you are when you get to be sort of college age or even coming out of high school. So this will be a massive memory, hopefully a memory and not an ongoing situation for all of those students. So I do think that ultimately, we will get back to what we used to do. But I also think that this situation has allowed us to see, for example, that people can work as efficiently, if not more efficiently, from home. And I know there's lots of talk about this out there in the world too, right? These people rent all sorts of expensive office space, and they're finding out that, right? Because there was always this view, which anybody who works in an office knows is false, that you're working all day long while you're there, and if you go home, you'd slack off, because of course, not true. And a lot of people have said, wow, it's sort of amazing how productive I am because, Bill and Susan aren't coming in and chatting and so forth. So you could really stay focused in a way. And now I'm talking about, this is for folks who don't have a husband or wife video chatting in another room and a kid running around and so on. But people have managed to figure out ways. And I think a lot of students who might have put their nose in the air at online might be more willing to give that a better go. Having taught on online in the online environment, well, the whole 20 years that I was teaching, it's really very, very good. There are pluses and minuses to both ways of doing it. And for classes that get set up in the right way, it's really great. And it gives the kind of flexibility that people want. So I think that the landscape will change. I don't know what it will look like, but I think there will be lasting changes because of discoveries we've made along the way with being forced to turn ourselves into something we never would have expected to be.
To piggyback on that, Allison, as well, we've discovered with our alumni events online, we are reaching people now all over the country.
Right.
We are reaching alumni internationally.
Yep.
And prior, our touch points were people who were physically in the space where we were holding an event. So it's been very surprising in a good way to see the number of folks we are touching now. Although we love to touch them physically in person,
Sure.
Can't do it quite yet, but this, I think alumni relations is going to be a combination of the live and the web. And, we just going to think about it differently moving forward with all kinds of options to engage people in different ways.
Yeah. And I never Zoomed before this.
Right.
And I quite enjoy this possibility. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Brian. It's not for everything, and it's not all the time, but it's a very efficient way to be able to see people, hook up, you can share your screen, you can get stuff up there. And it also sort of keeps things rolling in a way. You kind of have to be a little more disciplined somehow. So I think it has its place going forward as well. Yeah. So I think things will, because we're creatures of habit, some of things will go back, but there will be changes.
Yep.
I think faculty have really embraced Zoom as well. And I've heard from several people who teach online that they plan to continue to use Zoom, that it's a great way to engage with students, you know, that you're not going to see in person. And it's also a way to expand your reach for guest speakers. So, you know, faculty who've, you know, relied on local experts to come in and talk have now realized that, you know, really it's the limits are endless in terms of the kinds of people that you could bring into your classroom virtually through a Zoom.
That's a very good point. Very good point. I hadn't thought of before.
And the other thing that strikes me, because environmental ethics, if we have fewer people driving, flying, that's going to be much, much better for the environment. And so I think people, whether they have the will to continue to think about that as a possible value added, I'm not sure, but I know I haven't missed commuting down to campus. I've put a half a tank of gas in my car since March. That's it. So, you know, that's been, and I'm riding my bike locally more than I might, because usually you'd stop in your car on your way home from work or something. And now to fire up the engine to go a 10-minute bike ride seems kind of kooky. So, you know, I've lost a pound and I've been out on the bike more. And yeah, so I think that's also a real plus. And as Wendy said, you know, if you can access people at a distance without jet fueling them here and putting them up in a hotel. I mean, there's lots of ways in which I think those changes will save money and have greater efficiency. And I don't mind traveling, but I think a lot of people would just as soon sit in their office and do a Zoom lecture than fly in and out.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I really hadn't heard of Zoom prior to this, and now Zoom is, you know, a way of life.
Exactly.
You know, I wish I had stock in Zoom, but
even for short one-on-one meetings that before would have been like a phone call, you know, see someone's face. And so, and I didn't really FaceTime or anything except with my mother, though I'd be, you know, seeing the ceiling rather than her face. Get that organized. But yeah, so I know a lot of people have been FaceTiming for years, so this just seems like a natural extension, but I was a bit of a Luddite, so.
Same here. Same here. I think we still have more questions. Jordan or Elizabeth? Do we, or am I just seeing something on the chat feature?
No, we just had someone who let us know they had to log off and thanked us.
I saw a panic look in Elizabeth's eye when I said we have more questions.
Like, oh no, I missed one.
Right. Okay, so we're out of questions, correct?
I think we've got them all answered.
Yeah, I think we've answered them all.
You both did a wonderful job. Any closing remarks or anything else that wasn't asked that you would like to share?
Oh, you're go ahead. Oh,
and Wendy just froze up there, but
this is one of the downsides of the Zooming.
Yeah, that is okay. Now she's well, she was unfrozen. Now she's frozen again. Well, Allison, do you have anything or no?
I just want to thank people for joining us and asking such great questions. It's always fantastic to have an opportunity to cavil about our college. We've got great faculty, fabulous students, the best parts of people's degrees because of the general education courses we offer. We round out, on my view, the students with the humanities and the arts and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's great. And I leave with, again, fingers crossed that things work out as well as we can hope they will under the circumstances.
Yes, I think we should all cross our fingers there. So
for all the good it does. I mean,
yeah, I know.
There's no cause and effect here, but it feels good to do it.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much. We will continue throughout the fall semester with coffee talks in addition to presenting faculty webinars on different topics that we believe are interesting to our alumni. So deans, I'll be back in touch with you all about possible topics moving forward on those also. In the meantime, alumni, we encourage you to continue to check csualumni.com for updates for additional programming events or just communications from your alumni association, and also to follow us on our various social media channels to keep updated as well. So we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.